Pretty welcome. Hi there, everybody. Welcome to the program. My name is Dean. Special program this morning. It's not really a program. It's just an interview. The interview, and very honored to have him here. He was the chief of what is now known as the Assembly of First Nations in Canada. His name, and he's a tireless activist for the Indigenous community, and he wrote Section 25 and 35 of the Constitution Act, and he might be one of the most impressive individuals you've ever met. Real pleasure to welcome Chief Del Riley to the program today. Chief Del, wonderful to see you. You look like $1 million this morning.
Thank you. I feel great. So I'm looking forward to the interview here.
Yeah, me too. Really appreciate you being here. I was watching a video of you prior to coming on, which Tom Kiefer, which is how we met, shared with me. And you've been a tireless advocate for Indigenous people. Again, going back to your history as as the chief of the First Nations from 1980 to 1982. You're well into your 70s, and you're not stopping from trying to educate people as to the history that the Indigenous people of this country have had to suffer through and continue to suffer through. And so it's a great pleasure for me to have you on. It's a real honor. I just wanted to maybe start by asking you, where are you today in terms of how you're processing all of this information that you knew about, in terms of residential schools. It really seems like this has kind of woken us all up, and I know it's woken me up. But how are you processing this as we continue to find out about, the travesty, the genocide that's taken place in the residential school system in this country?
Well, I was really inspired to get back out and do a few things by the uncovering of these unmarked graves, and I knew, and matter of fact, I was putting out information about 5-6 years ago that, and this is a historical fact, that Dr. Peter Bryce in 1909 reported that there was a 51% death rate in all the residential schools across Canada. Now, if you extrapolate that 10 years before and 10 years after, you're looking at an initial amount of about maybe 8,000 deaths, and it adds up. So whatever amount that adds up to is very conservative. So I know it's going to be ongoing for probably several years while they do uncover these unmarked graves. And I know my own community has one too, because we had a residential school right in the middle of my community.
That was in Brantford, or is that where you're from?
No, I'm from Chippewa-the-Thames, but Chippewa-Thames had a Muncie residential school there, but they never sent the people from my community to the one that was in the community. They sent people to other outside residential schools. All my parents and uncles and aunts were sent to Shingwalk and Sault Ste. Marie.
So your family, like you were yourself part of a residential school.
I was sent for 5 years to the one at Brantford, and in my own mind, I consider that the worst of all of them, and I'll explain some of that. But I'd like to tell you what happened when they come to pick us up.
Please.
Okay, and this is emotional for me, and it's something I didn't tell my kids actually until lately. A couple of RCMP officers came to the house, and we were a family of 3 adults and 8 children, and somehow the Indian agent must have sent them there. They probably had some openings at one of the residential schools, which actually was the case. So an Indian agent had come around before that, probably tallying up who was going to go and who he's going to send and whoever. But they come to the house knocking, and my grandfather, which was one of the three adults, he was there as well. Well, he had lost 10 of his 11 kids. They were sent to Shingwalk in Sault Ste. Marie. So he was visibly upset here because now his grandkids were going to go the same way as he'd seen his own children go. And so he was trying to fight them off with his cane. He was in his 70s at that point, and the lady was she was really fighting them off, and she actually ended up saving the three youngest from being taken away. My father was, of course, threatened with 6 months in jail if he didn't give up the kids, so he was forced to give us up. So 5 of us were taken in. And incidentally, I had just come out of a sanatorium for a TB. My mother just died, and I'd come out, and all of a sudden, here I am being sent into a residential school with lots of other kids. And I
With
had
tuberculosis.
I had TB, the most contagious disease at the time. There was no cure for it. So I can only say I believe they sent me in as some sort of biological weapon. Whether I infected other kids or not, I can't tell you for sure. Of course, I'm not a medical person, but other kids have told me a lot of kids were sick, and I was lucky to I got really sick in there, and my grandmother, who was a medicine lady, came in, and she stayed with me a whole week, and I got better. And but that's how I survived that one. But the other things about the residential school, go ahead and ask me. But the conditions were unbelievable, horrific.
Yeah, that's what I want to know. I go back to the fact that and I don't think people can compute what it would be like to have police officers come into your home that are supposed to protect you and threaten, beat, and kidnap your children. Like, you lived through that.
Yes.
And they sent you to this residential school, and you had tuberculosis, almost like a biological weapon, as you pointed out. You make it through with your grandmother coming to help sit with you and heal you. It wasn't Western medicine that helped. And you then spend 5 years in the residential school, and the conditions were?
It was an awful shock, when you first go in as a 5 or 6 year old, and I think the first thing I had to do was start fighting. First night I got there, it was in fight, and next morning immediately in another fight, and but this was common. You learned how to fight, and but the other thing was you also learned about what it was like to be terrorized and what it's like to live in fear. And of course, they didn't feed you very well, so you were also hungry all of the time. And a lot of the days we used to get up maybe 4 o'clock in the morning. We'd sneak out. We're just little kids, 6, 7, 8-year-old kids sneaking out. We had to walk to about a mile to the garbage dump. But every Sunday morning, that's where a lot of us were looking for garbage that the businesses would throw out that night, because Sunday was closed, and we usually got a few things that sustained us or kept us alive, and
Like food?
food.
So you and some other students of the residential school would go to the garbage dump to try and eat just so you could stay alive.
There's many of us, not just a few.
Lots. Yeah. And did the residential school say that that was okay? Like they didn't get in your way? They're like, yeah, you can go and eat garbage?
They never said anything, and they mostly never found out, because they never had really enough staff in there to monitor you. We could sneak away.
Mm-hmm.
But, also, any kinds of infractions, you got beatings. I had a brother that ran away 15 times because he just couldn't stand the place. It was better that he ran away.
Mm-hmm.
Took his beatings. It took a month for him to heal up, but he would go again. And
Mm-hmm.
but that's how what the feeling was really like about having to stay in that place. So many of them.
Sorry, go ahead.
So many of them ran away. I was too young at the time. I didn't know any direction or distances. So, but I was planning later on, when I fourth and fifth year, I was figuring how the heck am I going to run away from this place.
Mm. Mm. So you're 6 years old. You get sent to live in a residential school. Chief Del Riley is our guest. He's the former chief of the Assembly of First Nations, and he's a tireless activist for Indigenous rights. He is the author of Section 25 and 35 of the Constitution Act, which effectively says, and is being ignored and has been for 40 years, that Indigenous people have the right to self-governance and the right to their own territory, and everyone else can shove it. So that is something that you have tirelessly advocated for. We're talking about the residential school system with which you were abused, and we're finding out all these unmarked graves, and we're seeing them all over the place, and we're coming to terms with what that is. And you touched on, the quality of life. Horrific stories of abuse, and I don't want to take you down an overly emotional road to relive the horror and the terror that you had to deal with. But when qualifying that abuse at the hands of, the government, the Catholic Church, people involved, in the colonial shoving of a group of individuals who were here first. But can you explain to me the level of abuse that you saw and that you endured, and then because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to figure out, we know that there are unmarked graves. We know that a lot of these kids were abused or neglected to the point of death. What did that look like?
Well, I'll start out by saying every one of the 5 or 6 year olds that were taken in with in the same years I was, they were all sexually abused multiple times, and this sort of carried on until you could fight them off. I think by the third year, that's what I could fight it all off, and but after that, I guess the abuse was both from their staff. I was in an Anglican church-run place, and there was no protection for the kids whatsoever, and no one, any of the kids, could run to. So the most of them, were, you could see it in their eyes. A lot of them had just kind of given up. And I think the fourth and fifth year, they had me looking after little kids. So I was looking after most times at least two, maybe 3 to 5 year olds, and you could see the lost look in their eyes all the time, and it was very difficult but somebody had to look after them. So I did it, but I think that that probably instilled in me the thought that I had to help people. And once I got out, that's what I did. I was out in the street at 12, and I knew then I had to think for myself. I didn't have guidance from anywhere, and I decided to educate myself. So that's what I did. And
how? How did you educate yourself? Like, yeah, like take me through that.
I went to school. I graduated, and of course, of course lived in the Indian community, and you see all the effects of having to live in well, these are reserves, but essentially today they're all ghettos, and they survive on government ghetto programs. There is no economy in those communities yet, and the Indian Act, the racist Indian Act, or Canada's apartheid law, controls almost every activity through the John A. MacDonald appointed club called the Chief and Council, who he has never given any authority to, so they can't do anything anyway. They can't pass any laws. They can't do anything except manage the ghetto programs, and that's all they can do today. So you've got nobody that can really address and fix these racially legislated situations that First Nations are in.
And listen, Chief Del Riley is our guest. You bring up a great point. We're talking about the horrificness of the discovery of everything that has happened to the Indigenous people, and we're all waking up to that nightmare. But now we're seeing words like truth and reconciliation get tossed around. Now we're seeing, Justin Trudeau performatively sitting in front of an unmarked grave with a teddy bear. You're seeing people use this, as an election strategy. And you're the one, and you and your people are doing the work of trying to figure out, where these children are and how to bring them home. So what does that look like to you, Chief Del? Like, what does truth and reconciliation really look like to someone who has lived through the terror, has gone through the abuse, has fought tirelessly for, the better part of 60 years for, Indigenous rights and self-governance? What does truth and reconciliation look like to you in your mind?
I've never met a person that was involved in that, and my only understanding is that we have a lot of industry type Indians that were given the jobs of doing this. But as I've said, I've never met one of them. So I don't know what they're doing or what, they've never contacted me. And I'm probably the one they should have talked to.
Like, you don't talk to the government, like they don't come to you and say, hey, Chief Del, we need some help trying to figure out how we can make amends and how we can figure out a way to make this right. Like, nobody's talked to you. Has the government talked to anybody that of substance in the community?
No, but I wish they would talk to me. I could show them how to solve this.
How?
Eliminate all of the racism out of the Indian Act. You can use it as a financing thing, but even at present, we have no representation in either government, either federal or provincial. Yet they're removing resources from all of our treaty lands and wherever they can maneuver First Nations into giving them some rights. And it's usually one-sided. They set up all the rules. They decide how little they'll give you, and because of the economic conditions of most First Nations, they have neither the ability to deal properly with these kinds of situations, and usually get taken. So there's a lot to do yet, and but the most important thing is that we can get rid of the racism out of the the racist scheme called the BNA Act that some immigrants from Europe had set up. And incidentally, the racism that we face has usually, it all come from the European Caucasoid people that are, I guess, victims of this horrific doctrine of discovery. This doctrine of discovery, of course, says they could come over and discover us and take all of our lands and resources, and they did. And we're just fighting back now. And our fight is I'm going to be around the next 10 years fighting against this racism. And I'll be speaking wherever I can, speaking all over the country. And I'm going to try to set straight exactly what Aboriginal and treaty rights are. They're really rights of a nation, your nation. And there's a lot of work we have to do yet to determine exactly what all of that means. And we've had the ability or opportunity yet to really put all of the facts, create the facts that give the true story here.
And that's really, you know, in my conversations with Tom and a few other people that you work with, my friend Derek, who that's the part that we need the most help with. And as someone who's a total outsider, who has just loads of empathy for the situation and the people, that's really, if you kind of, in my mind, I could be wrong, but that's what we boil it down to, what fixes this for you, like, and not fixes it. And I think it's the education portion, because, we've been snowed by, the colonial education system of this country. We have. I mean, we as people who are educated here in white communities, and listen, Indigenous people are not Canadian. I don't think people recognize that. I don't think people understand that and I'm proudly not talking to a Canadian. I'm talking to one of the first people that own this. You own this country. Your people were here and have been here for tens of thousands of years, for crying out loud. It's like we all get the colonial aspect of what I don't understand is the anger that comes back to the Indigenous community from colonial people when faced with truth, right? The truth about these residential schools, the truth about colonialism and how it came here, the smallpox blankets, the report by Dr. P.H. Bryce in 1909 that said, hey, listen, there's a problem here. Like the truths that we continue to see from the Indigenous community continue to get buried. They continue to get glossed over, and the government continues to steal from your land and resources from you, and still refuses to allow any reservation to have economy. Like, that's the part that I mean, all of it is still geared, no matter what Justin Trudeau or any government says about trying to work with the Indigenous people in this country, not of this country, in this country, that own this country, that we're here first. It is your land. How they can stand there and say, we're about truth and reconciliation, while they're litigating your history so they don't have to pay you, and they're still stealing from you, and you still don't have the right to be able to have your own economy on your own land and self-governance.
Yeah.
Am I far off?
No, you're right on. It took me 22 years. I actually sued the government for the residential school thing. It took me 22 years to finally get them to a court where the only thing they could do was at that point, because they didn't want to go into court. I wanted to get the church into court in the worst way, and the government, and all they could do was at that point was settle. But it took me 22 years. This is Canadian justice system, so this is how it works with us. And that's just an example. But I never.
Well, they just dragged it. They just dragged it out for 22 years and then tried to bury it. And finally, they just said, we don't want. We'd rather pay you than admit to what we did to you.
Exactly. But I did one thing. I made sure I didn't sign off like the others accepted their little payment, and I said, I'm going to write about this, and I all settled, but with absolutely no conditions, and that was the way it settled. But I also got my 2 kids paid off as breaches of fiduciary obligation, and I did that at least.
Good for you. Is it now when you are when you talk about not just your experience, but when you talk about fighting the government and you look at the lack of coverage that comes. Like Tom and I were talking about it. Tom Kiefer from Real People's Media, who you work with, a great guy, and he's super responsible for setting this up. So I appreciate him very much. But he's like me. He's white. He's Anglo, and he works in the community with the community because he's convicted by the wrongs of the past. So when he's trying to get that information out, and I know this for a fact, there is an active effort to subvert any news coming out of the Indigenous community. How do you because listen, the only way we don't know about this is the active suppression of this information, right? What the Indigenous people went through. So like when you're putting these things out, do you guys not go to mainstream media and say, hey, listen, this is a tragedy of unthinkable proportions and it's going on today? Do you get pushback from them?
I couldn't probably really answer that because I don't know anybody in mainstream media, and I just do my thing. But I really do it for my people, and if I'm out there, I don't care if they're around or not. I'm still going ahead, and I'm going to convince people I'm going to teach them what they need to know.
But why do you think it doesn't get? Because this is a tragedy. Why do you think it doesn't get coverage, the kind of coverage it deserves?
Well, because they're all located in concentration camps, which the reserves really are, and they're hidden from view. So the only most of their connections are with some Indian Affairs individual that was administering these ghetto programs, and which a few of the members get the benefit, but mostly most of them don't. So you've got a ghetto situation probably created in every First Nation community across Canada. Reserves are
that was intentional, right? I mean, this is intentionality. What you're seeing today is an intentional thing.
Very racist and intentional.
Mm-hmm. So the video I watched you at the Shawanaga reservation. There was an eviction that was going on. We'll get to the video in just a second. And you showed up and told set up officers that they weren't allowed to be there, which they're not, according to Section 2535. So who governs? Like, how does it work? I see police on different reservations that are agencies of certain police. I mean, it is so fugazi how the government has been able to leech operatives, law enforcement into reservations and situations and insert them. But who governs? Who polices reservations?
Well, they had there's a program for Indian policing services on the reserve since 1976. Actually, I signed the first agreement to put these police forces in place on First Nations community, and the intention at that time was that this force would grow into something was useful and something that it would be a whole department that would contain all of the elements that policing need to police, which would include working with the other police forces so they could coordinate everything. But the budgets have remained frozen for the Indian police, and they can't even afford equipment right now. But the OPP, I'm just talking about Ontario here, have decided to put up their own police force. They've created a police force that they have near all reserves that they use to try to control not only the Indian police force, but they issue hundreds of charges against First Nations and a lot against the young people. So you know, it's this is the way we see police. We see them in a very racist sense, and we have no control over the OPP at this point. And actually, they have no right to police in the Indian community. The province is only an administrative unit of the federal government, and First Nations are nations, and they've always dealt with Canada as a nation. So it's always been nation to nation. I know the feds are trying to offload onto the province because they want to get away from recognizing the sovereignty and the rights of First Nations. But we've always had the big fight against this, and this is the reason I decided that we needed our rights protected. So I for years and years, I decided that I was going to go in and get these things put in the Constitution, so we'd have that constitutional level of protection. And I was hoping I would have the respect of the federal government to begin to right all of these racial wrongs that our people have faced. But
yeah, you know what it looks like, Chief Dell, to me is just like an outsider. But as you explain how policing works in tandem with the OPP here in Ontario, it's almost like, you know, the provincial and federal government. You can put up whatever section you want, 25, 35. They found a way to give you what you want, but still maintain outside control of what goes on the inside by having this para policing organization, and these organizations that are supposed to be policing Indigenous reservations according to, you know, the policy that's written. But what they've done is, it sounds like, and I could be wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like what they've done is they've just added those detachments as a way to still keep an arm and hand in how to police people they're not allowed to police, right? That's what am I correct?
It's maintain racial control, and
right.
See, there's also a big problem that the province will face in the future, because a lot of these treaties were made before the province ever came into effect, and the province has never asked the First Nations if they could include all of their reserve and treaty lands within the boundaries of the province. So there's province going to face a big problem there as well. And now they're feasting off of the resources that I want to mention this one thing, because they're as part of the racial scheme of the BNA Act, they also needed an Indian Act to they could use as, say, hey, this is justification. What we're doing is the law now, and it's our judges will always rule in favor of the law. Mm-hmm. Now, if you look after, they needed one important case, and that they used the 1888 St. Catharines Milling case. Of course, there was no Indians present, and the feds in the province divided up treaty lands between them, and of course the resources, and this was their justification. But if you look at the ruling in the 1888 St. Catharines Milling case, you'll find that that it is a carbon copy of the doctrine of discovery. And I want students to examine closely the Indian Act, and you'll also find the Indian Act is permeated with that philosophy of the doctrine of discovery. And of course, we remain as the victims of this kind of targeted racism.
Mm-hmm. What is the doctrine of discovery, Chief Dell?
The doctrine of discovery was papal bull pronounced. They call them papal bulls, but they were pronouncements, and it's like having a big major announcement from, well, their representative, Jesus, and so everybody listens to it. So the Papal Bull essentially said that any of the colonists from the European colonizing countries, which were Catholic, could come over, and if once they discovered the brown-skinned people in their land, they could dispossess the brown people of their land, and they could enslave them. They could do as they pleased. But this is a Catholic religion. That's what they believe, and still believe today.
Mm-hmm. Oh, dude, you've got a friend in me when it comes to chasing Catholics into the truth.
This is Canada's DNA Act. It is permeated with all of that racial nonsense.
And see, no one takes time, and I'm trying to get through the Indian Act, and I've read Section 25 and 35, and I'll just put this up here, which you authored. Section 25 and 35, the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms address how rights protected under the Charter will intersect with existing rights held by Canada's Indigenous people. You're not Canada's Indigenous people. You're the Indigenous people of this country. Section 25 guarantees that no rights protected under the Charter will be used to abrogate or derogate from right belonging to Aboriginal people, including land rights and rights under royal proclamation. And Section 35 provides distinct recognition and affirmation of existing Aboriginal treaty rights. This is an important step in amalgamating common law and Aboriginal laws and traditions. You wrote that. How is it being dismissed to this day?
Well, I also know what it all means. I can interpret it and what its intention was at the time. Now, the only reason it's in there was because I opened an office in England and I started lobbying around the world about the conditions of our people in Canada. And the government came to me shortly thereafter and said, well, if you will close your office in England, we will give you your protection for Aboriginal treaty rights. I accepted that at the word of Mr. Chrétien, and we shook hands, and that's how it got in. But he also came to me later at the 11th hour and said, we'd like to take out the Métis. Is that all right with you? And I said, no. The Métis supported this when we got in. I promised them that their name would appear in there, and I said, nope. They stay in. So that's how the Métis got in there as well.
Why did they want them out?
Because they didn't want to deal with them.
Is that all this is? At the end of the day, the colonialism and the effort to never have to deal with, as they used to call it, the Indian problem?
Exactly. And they shove it under the rug all the time or keep it hidden. And they've been able to do a good job because the reserves are really hidden away from society in a lot of ways. And if people go in there and see the kind of living conditions, the total lack of any kind of economy, and it becomes even a worse ghetto situation than I think that you even have in the Americas with the blacks.
Mm-hmm. Explain those conditions. Like, because I'm again, and I'll get the video up. But you took part in, and I watched the video, and in the video you can clearly see the conditions of a member of your community who was being evicted by people who were trespassing. These are people who are technically and legally trespassing, but they are acting as law enforcement officers. And I'll play the video. We'll put it on mute just to start, just so you can kind of see, the conditions that they're talking about, if you can. This is from an eviction on Shawanaga First Nations. Is that correct?
That's correct.
This is you right there. Great Roots shirt. I have the same one, by the way. It looks very comfortable. And these are the law enforcement officers we're talking about who are trespassing, trying to evict someone. But these are the living conditions that have been forced, not enjoyed, but forced on the people of in this country, not of, but in this country, by the government for 200 years. There you are telling these guys they got to split. I love it, dude. I absolutely love it. Just the courage. But these are the conditions that people are forced to live in, and it's not just a coincidence. Like Chief Dell, that's a concerted effort by the government, is it not?
Yeah, and they're hoping they can take advantage of the ignorance of First Nations people. But hey, I know the law. I used to teach the Indian Act, so I know it thoroughly, and I also know how it the sections I was quoting there supersede any provincial law. So I was merely trying to educate that officer as to what her real position was and why she had no jurisdiction there.
And why doesn't she have jurisdiction there?
Because the province is not a state. They're dealing with nations, and they're just administrative unit of the feds. This is why when problems do come up, the feds always have to step in, and even your court system. If you use constitutional arguments, the feds have to step in. The province can't, and because it's not a state.
How many times do you do this a year? Like, how many times do you go and stand up for the rights of First Nations people who are clearly under the thumb of this government and clearly trying to be squeezed into giving up? Like, how many times do you do this where you go and remind people that, hold it, you have no right here. You can't be on this land. How often do you do this?
Well, I've been on the road for about a week now, and this is common for me. I'm going to do this for the next 10 years, and so I've set that for myself. I don't know how much progress I'll make, but I'll certainly do some damage to the racism of the Canadian government.
Yeah, well, and that's the goal. The goal is to. Let's talk about the truth here. Let's not talk about governing. Let's not talk about who was here first anymore, because that answer is that question's been answered, right? Let's talk. Sorry, go ahead.
This is all fixable.
Yeah.
Sit down. I'll show you how to do it. I'll show you what you've got to change in there.
So why don't people take you up on that?
They have there are a treaty making and arrangements they have with First Nations were strictly designed so that they could get control and access over lands and resources. This is all about resources, and the people that actually run government are the big corporations. So the people only put those representatives in, but they don't direct them after that. The big corporations, with all their contributions to their candidates, control the direction of government. We have no representation in any of those governments, either provincial or federal, and so this is a huge problem. I don't know how we can ever fix that.
Well, representation is a major issue in this country, right? And you see that, and I think that during the Black Lives Matter protests, we sort of woke up to a little bit to representation, and when you talk about representation, and I don't think that that's talked about enough, Chief Dell. I don't think we're talking about what happened. We're talking about the illegitimate effect it continues to have on Indigenous people in this country. But the other things we're not talking about yet, like, how to get Indigenous representation in government, right? How do we get Indigenous representations in lobby groups? How do we get is the Indigenous community allowed to lobby? No?
No, they don't even have a lobby. The problem is a lot of the organizations. I'm actually doing the work of the political organizations on Ontario. Of course, I don't get paid like they do, but I do it for free. And
you do it for the right reasons, yeah.
I'm going to be continuing to do it. So nobody tells me what I can't do. Like the federal government tells them those organizations, what they can't do, or they'll pull their funding back on them. So they've been very compliant with them. So they don't stand up for our rights. But I'm going to do it if I have to do it all by myself.
I don't think you do anymore. That's the thing. I think that you know, there are enough people who have woken up and who don't appreciate the role government has played in terrorizing you and your people. We don't appreciate it, and to look the other way is basically permitting the abuse, in my opinion. You know, and as I think we have a responsibility. Oh, I know we have a responsibility to the truth here, just the truth. And if we can focus on just the truth about the oppression of indigenous people in this country, not of this country, as their own nation, you know, we should be fucking embarrassed. Pardon my language. We should be embarrassed by where we are, and you should also be embarrassed by this current government's facade of, you know, you watch Justin Trudeau campaign and use you and your people as a campaign tool. And he gets in and for 7-8 years does nothing. We start uncovering the graves of these innocent children who were abused and murdered in these concentration camps. And
I have a big, there is a same thing in my community yet. They haven't looked at it yet, but I actually know where the burial had taken place, but I haven't said anything yet. So
no, you haven't, of in Brantford or in the Sioux? Muncie in the Sioux
residential school.
Are they looking for bodies there now too?
I think they may be, but I of course, you know, a lot of times you just never hear the news of what's planned or what's going on. And but I'm sure people are considering that all over Canada. Where were I don't know how many they had, 130 residential schools?
160. We've been to 153, and they found over 1,400 bodies or remains of 1,400 of your ancestors.
Yeah. Then there's I estimate it's about 40,000. They'll probably find it, and even when I was in residency, and I'll tell you this, I used to sneak out. A bunch of us little kids would sneak out, so we could avoid beatings, and we could avoid harassment, and we'd go in the bush and play. But along the road, one of those roads, they used to dump the ashes. And I'd look down and I'd see teeth in the ashes. And but you know, hey, I don't
just
know.
At the side of the road.
Yeah, right within that.
So they would cremate these children who they murdered, and then they would dump their remains at the side of the road, and you saw like ashes with teeth and stuff in them.
But I don't know how old the ashes were.
Oh man, oh man, I'm sorry. I mean. You know, I don't know what to say. I mean, I don't really know how to respond to that other than I'm sorry. I don't. In living with that for 70 odd years, you know, like, do you, how do you, when you go down and you remember, you know, you go through these conversations, that's got to be hard still.
Oh,
right?
It's very difficult, and but I don't know. I've had to toughen up, and let me tell you this thing about. I actually went to the government. They announced they had a program that would address, you know, the trauma that the residential school people were going through. I called them, and they refused to allow or refused to pay any doctors that would treat me at the time. So I never did I only had my condition assessed. They only told me what it was, but so I never did get treatment for the post-traumatic stress, which I'm going to suffer the rest of my life. But once I found out what had caused it, I learned everything I could about it, and it's allowed me today to be able to at least talk about it. It still bothers me, but I can now talk about this is the first time in my life I've been able to talk about the horrific conditions of the residential school.
Today is the first time you've been able to talk about it.
Well, I've the last few 2 or 3 years, I've been starting to talk about it, and and I've talked more and more about it. So this is the most I've ever talked to media about it.
Good news is we're not media, Del. I don't like the media, so we don't.
Okay, well, my apologies, but
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, listen, and that's, honored. I'm honored that you took some time to talk to us today. I'm sorry that
we just scratched the surface.
I know, and we're going to talk more, Del. Chief Del, we're going to talk more. I want to get to the bottom of some of these things. I want to tell the truth. And I can't tell the truth. I can't tell your truth. I can't do this interview, or I can't repeat your experience, and it's incredibly fucking disingenuous for any person who is not Indigenous to have an opinion that is on the opposite side of being an ally, in my opinion. And you have our full support. You have my full support. I am amazed by you and the character and the strength of the Indigenous community. And you are your own nation, and you need to be treated as such. And if we really want to be allies, we put our money where our mouth is, and we allow the education process to begin by allowing people like you who have championed for just the truth. I mean, just the truth. You're not asking for much. You're just asking for the truth and for some reconciliation for the genocide of your people for the past 300-400 years. It would be really, really nice if we could get there. And if we can help in any small way, that's what we will do. So having said all that, I'm extremely thankful for your time today, Chief Del. I hope we can continue talking about this on a regular basis, to talk about, not just the abuses, but the opportunity for heroism that exists for people who come alongside to help tell the truth and help uncover the truth. That's really all this is, right? We can hear the stories, we can shock people, we can talk about policy, which we will, and how to affect change positively. But let's just start telling the truth here, and let's start telling the unabated truth about who and why Indigenous people in this country are continually oppressed, no matter what any administration says they're trying to do about it. So I appreciate you being here, Chief Del, and I hope we can talk again soon.
Thank you. And
thank you very much.
I appreciate the opportunity of getting the truth out there.
Well, we're going to do a lot of that here. So I hope you have a lot in the tank.
I do.
Good. Well, Chief Del, I'll let you go, but thank you for your time, and we will chat soon, and have a wonderful day. Say hi to Tom and the gang. Okay. There you go. Chief Del, everybody. Chief Del Riley. Oh, Rookie, are you there? You there for this? You in the background? No, I don't think you're there. Anyway, that's hard. Oh, there he is. That's hard. That's hard. That's a hard conversation to have. Not for me. I mean, I'm just. Well, you imagine reimagining. I mean, no difference. There's no difference in my mind in that hero's experience and him talking about it than a Holocaust survivor talking about their experience. There's no difference. There's none. And here's the rub, kids, is this continues to happen softly. It continues to happen. This isn't new. This is the oppression in the community is criminal, and it's done with a smile in the in the vein of government and standing up for your colonial rights. That's what that is. And it continues. Half of our indigenous, not ours, sorry, half of the indigenous people of this country don't even have fucking drinking water. Drinking water. Water to fucking drink that's healthy. Because the government won't allow it. They won't allow it. They are preventing it. And you saw the way those people live on the reservation in the video. Not those people in that video who were trying to keep their home on land they own that the Canadian government has no rights to. Zero. Fucking none. None. And this is after murdering a couple 100,000 people for fun. That's not going to work. It doesn't work for me. It shouldn't work for you. It shouldn't work for you. You shouldn't be there not listening. You should, do something by listening and educating yourself. Don't shut yourself off because you didn't experience these experiences, or these are just stories and books, or people are just complaining and, oh, I didn't do anything. That's the one fucking argument I hate, Chris, the most. This one, and I see this from assholes on Twitter, and it's just toxic. This one, this is the one that gets me. Well, I didn't do anything. I didn't do it. What are they mad at me for? I'm not the white guy that. I don't get it. Do you get it now? You get it now after listening to a man who was lived it and lives it.
That's crazy, and it sucks because it's the history of Canada, so we're all responsible.
This is us, man. Yeah, fuck, we are. We are, and you know what? We're more responsible for that. The more we don't pay attention to it, the more we willingly go, I don't have to deal with that today because I got a job at a bank and I got a decent-looking wife and I got kids, and I don't have to pay attention to that. It's really not that hard to be an ally, dude. No, it really isn't. In any situation,
what we can do is just bring it to the forefront and keep doing interviews, because you saw how important it was for him to tell the story, and even him saying that I've never had this kind of a platform to talk about it.
Yeah,
that's how we move it forward, right?
Can you imagine that? I'm Googling, prepping for this interview. I'm Googling Chief Del Riley, right? Assembly of First Nations leader for a couple years, wrote Section 25 and 35 of the Constitution Act. Tireless advocate. Almost nothing on him on the internet.
Yeah.
Almost nothing. Do you know why? That's intentional, dude. That is fucking 100% intentional. The intentionality to freeze people out from actually telling their truth because it's embarrassing. Fuck you.
We're going to
seriously. Oh, I can't wait.
We're going to tell it.
I can't wait. How long have I been TML, by the way, on this podcast? The whole time? Toronto Maple Leafs? I just noticed that.
Heck, I wasn't in this till 25 minutes in. It just appeared. You guys just appeared.
Whatever. Anyway, thank you to Tom Kiefer, Real People's Media, Stacy, Derek, and, of course, Chief Del Riley for being part of that. He was the whole thing. That's the only job we have. Be an ally to the truth. To the truth. And if we're allies to the truth, here's the thing. This is why I think this is what makes me scarier, actually, is that the truth is it. That's it. That's all there is for me. Nothing else. The truth in every situation. The truth in who I am, the objective truth in how good or bad I am and what I need to do to be a better person, the objective truth about tragedies like this, objective truth. That's it. That's all I'm looking for here. And that's all. If we get that, if we can get that from this conversation, if we can talk about the objective truth, and if we can actually do it and get people to admit, despite the monetary implications, that, hey, just genocide of the indigenous people in this country for a few hundred years. It's time to fucking put it all on Front Street. That's it. It's just time. Anyway, thanks for watching and listening. Weird podcast early in the morning. I haven't done a morning. Yeah, I haven't done a morning thing for I don't know how long.
Hey, Dean back on mornings, eh?
Dean mornings. Hey, how you doing, everybody? Hey, it is 10 o'clock in the morning. 21 degrees. Hell of a storm yesterday in the city of Toronto. No, That's
like
fun.
your walk.
Yeah, you know what the thing is? I didn't have a lot of time to think about this podcast before we got on it because it was like up at 6, prepping, doing the stuff, and really excited for it because this is the kind of stuff I fucking love, right? And I love it because it means something. I don't care if 3 people see this. We had a few hundred, but I don't care if like 3 people see this. We got deplatformed for 7 days on YouTube because of the Canadian Anti-Hate Network yesterday. So all they did was prevent this conversation from being seen by more people. You know? And I won't
our
stop.
appeal too, so that's fun.
Yeah. Did you figure out that YouTube thing?
Yeah.
Did we appeal?
They denied
Oh,
it.
they denied our appeal?
Yeah. They said they carefully looked into that episode and we still were spreading misinformation.
No, they didn't. Because we put that anti-masker on, Sherry Strong, anti-vaxxer, anti-masker, to shit on her, which we did for an hour.
Oh, yeah.
And they you know what happened was I found out the Canadian Anti-Hate Network, I haven't had a lot of fun with them, by the way. I put out this tweet the other day saying, hey, everybody, subscribe to our YouTube channel because we're going to go present some truths about the Canadian Anti-Hate Network. The next day,
flagged.
We not just flagged, we got a strike and suspended for 7 days. So I did a little research myself and found out the complainants were absolutely from the Canadian Anti-Hate Network. And it came within minutes of me saying, hey, subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're going to tell you the truth about the Canadian Anti-Hate Network. Fucking hilarious, isn't it? No conspiracy there. That's just pettiness, which I love. Which I love. Because if there's one thing I can do better than anger, it's pettiness.
As you drink your pineapple bubbly.
I spilled it too.
Bubbly.
Anyway, thanks, dude, for doing this. I appreciate it.
No problem.
That is Chris Rook, head of production here at DeanBlundell.com. Rookie, call him. Rookie. Fucking great new haircut and everything. Have a great day, everybody. Real thankful for Chief Del Riley's time this morning and Tom Kiefer. Appreciate you being here, everybody. Don't forget, you can sign up subscribe to our YouTube channel because we'd like to jump that number up so that we can really do some damage. It'd be a lot of fun. So if you could go subscribe to our YouTube channel, Dean Blundell Show YouTube, that'd be great. Join us on Twitch as well. Apparently we're there. Facebook, wherever you get your content, Apple, iTunes, etc. I don't care if you like or subscribe. I just care that you listen. So thanks. But if you want to do that too, great. Super duper. Thanks to our friends at Ed's Fine Imports. His Gitch are the best. You can order them now. Promo code Gitch and then the number 3 will get you an extra pair for free. He'll send you 3. Luxury underwear, number 1 in the market. You'll love them. Boxer briefs, pouch in the front. Wear them every day. EdsFineImports.com. EasyAutoFinancial.ca. Give them a dingy ding on the web. EasyAutoFinancial.ca, and they're going to set you up with financing for a vehicle. If it's hard to find financing and you got some credit issues, they are the balls. Make sure that they'll get you some financing, and they'll also send you to get your car. It's like one-stop shop for financing and vehicles. EasyAutoFinancial.ca. It's in the name. Blue Microphones, the official supplier of microphone podcast equipment to the DeanBlundell.com network. Now 77 podcasts strong. Big announcement, too, of a big one next week. Big. Anyway, our friends at Blue Microphones are responsible for everything that we do and how we sound and what we hear. You can order MoFi headphones, Blue Yeti X mics, bottle cap mics. You can order it all. Just go to bluemic.com, at Blue Microphones on Twitter, the official microphone of DeanBlundell.com podcast network. I got one more. Do I got one more? I think I do. Did I get them all? I think I did. If not, I'll come back and do them another time. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to sign up for our newsletter, DeanBlundell.com. Sign up for subscribe on YouTube. That'd be great. So we can really shove them. That'd be awesome. Bye.